Hello everybody, welcome to the Today Show. My guest today is Gavin Lee.
Hello.
From Mammoth Up and now Les Mis. How is it living here in London, and what did you miss?
Well, I moved here back in 2006 with Mary Poppins. I was very lucky from the London production of Mary Poppins to be asked to come and open the show on Broadway, and so I'm now in my 10th year of living in, actually live in New Jersey now. I live half hour from New York City. And the things I miss about London, I miss some of the food, not a lot of the food, but some of the snacks and the candies. I miss some British TV, but mostly I love living here because of the weather. Because in England it's grey and dull and drizzly and rainy a lot of the time. Whereas here we get 4 different separate seasons. Today it's very cold, but I know that in a few months it's going to be nice and warm and sunny, and so the main thing I like about America is the seasons.
You did a, what, Bugsy Malone. Who did you play and what is it about? And how did the movie differ from the play?
From the movie director and the play? Well, they were very different. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, Bugsy Malone is a fabulous Alan Parker movie that was made in 1976, and it made stars of Scott Baio and I blanked. Jodie Foster. And they decided in '83 to make a stage version of this musical. And for anyone who doesn't know, Bugsy Malone is a gangster film set in the 20s in New York City, but every single character is played by kids playing grown-ups. And they decided to do it on stage. I had a very small part called Seymour Scoop. He was one of the reporters. And I was in many other scenes as well, but that was my main little part. And it was a big ordeal to get this big film onto stage because there's lots of location scenes and there's lots of car chases. And in the movie, as well as the stage show, because they're kids, the cars actually have pedals. So they look like 1920s cars, but they have pedals. And every time during the chase scene a car would go off stage, the stage crew would manically pick up the car and turn it round and quickly push it back on again. It was a wonderful show. It lasted about 1.5 years, and I did it for about 5 months. And it was my first introduction into professional theatre when I was 11 years old.
Yeah, now you did. Well, you did another, what Peggy Sue. Who did you play? And can you give us a little background about that?
Yeah, another, it seems like I've done quite a few musicals that have come from movies. So back in, I think, '85, Kathleen Turner starred in a movie called Peggy Sue Got Married, and they decided to put it on stage. And it's a bit like Back to the Future, the movie Back to the Future with Michael J. Fox. She is a middle-aged housewife, and suddenly one day she wakes up and she's back at high school. She's playing a 16-year-old. And I played one of the 3 kind of men or boys in her life in that time. I played the science geek. I was a complete geek, scientist, nerd, pushing my glasses up all the time, briefcase. It was lots of fun, and it was a very 50s type show. And I had one solo, and the thing I hated about that solo is at the end I had to sing a really high note, and psychologically I got a thing about that note and I couldn't sing it. So maybe 50% of the time I didn't hit that note at the end and it sounded blimmin' awful. And you just get more and more angst about it, and eventually I went for some singing lessons, and a singing teacher managed to make me sing that note properly. So, but that's my lasting impression of that show, is that last note in my solo that I couldn't sing.
Now, you work with Stephen. What was that like, working with an iconic person like Stephen on?
Well, it was amazing. I was lucky enough to be in the very first production of Stephen Sondheim's first musical he wrote on his own, called Saturday Night. It's a musical that he wrote, I think back in his college days. It never got produced, it never got done. And then about probably 20 years ago, a little theatre in London called the Broadway decided, got the rights from Stephen Sondheim to put it on for the very first time. And I had a nice part in that show. And then a week before we opened, we were told that Stephen Sondheim was coming to have some rehearsal time with us and see the show. So suddenly it was the most awesome thing in the world, because I've been a Sondheim fan for years and actually not done any Sondheim shows. And I had 2 solos in that show, and he wanted to see everybody's solos. So we all went up one at a time onto the stage, sung the song, or did whatever we did in the song, and then he'd give us notes. And it was a very big deal. The show was a very big success for the Bridewell Theatre, and that play has gone on to be performed all over the world now. It's one of sort of college favourites for colleges to do of a Sondheim show. It was a lot of fun, and I got to meet him. It was fabulous.
Really Poppins.
Now, your breakout role was Bert in Mammoth Up. That was your breakout role.
Yeah.
That everybody knows you, got to know you, and got you a household name. Now, what was it like getting Dick Van Dyke seal of approval, and what did he give you any advice to play Bert?
Well, I got to play the role of Bert in Mary Poppins when it was first created in London, and I actually stayed with that show for 8 years. I did 2 years in London, 2 years on Broadway, nearly 2 years on the US national tour, and then I went back to Broadway for nearly another 2 years. And it wasn't until the 6th year that Dick Van Dyke actually saw the show. So I'd done many interviews like this for newspapers and TV, and everyone would always ask, what's it like stepping into the shoes of the wonderful Dick Van Dyke? Have you ever met him? And I always would say, he's never come to the show. I've been told by Disney that he doesn't like to fly, and he lives in Malibu and California. And so it wasn't until the national tour, the 6th year I've been doing the show, that we went to Los Angeles and finally came to the show. And it was a very big deal for everybody, but especially me, because I've been playing his role for so long. And he came to the opening night, and I got to bring him up on stage at the end, and this fantastic photo that got taken of us all standing in the bows, and I'm just grabbing him and I'm pulling him on, and I'm just going, and he's like smiling at the audience. And he was very gracious. He did a lovely speech saying how he felt he'd passed the torch on to me, which of course he hasn't. It will always be his role. And then actually while we were in LA about a month later, he came and had a cameo role, because you remember in the movie he plays the bank manager as well. And so he played the bank manager that night. They created this bank manager role for him, and of course he's white-haired now, and he made a joke, the fact that he doesn't have to act so much anymore. He doesn't need all the old man makeup, because he is an old man. And he was wonderful, and I then got to be on Entertainment Tonight with him, and I interviewed him at the Walt Disney Studios where they made the show.
I was watching that video that night on YouTube.
And so I met him, and I've met him a couple of times since then, so I can kind of call him a friend, but also I suppose a bit of a mentor, because I obviously watched him a lot growing up, and tried to take the best bits of his Bert and then create my own Bert on stage.
Did he give you any advice?
He didn't give me any advice. He was very quick to say that he thought my accent was better than his. Because of course, poor old Dick Van Dyke had a bad rap for his Cockney accent. And as you can hear, I'm from London, so my accent is kind of a London accent. But for Bert, I just like put it on a bit stronger, and then I like sound like a Cockney, you know. Whereas Dick had to just put it completely on, because obviously he's American. So
where is your accent from?
It's from London. I actually grew up 2 hours east of London, but I lived in London from 16 until I moved to Broadway with Mary Poppins. So I kind of call myself a Londoner, and this is like a London accent.
Yeah, how did the Mary Poppins change from London to Broadway to the US tour?
It did keep changing. The good thing was our creatives, our directors and our choreographers, they always kept coming back to the show and tweaking it and making it better. Like the London production was quite dark, and when it came to Broadway, they felt they wanted to make it more colourful, especially the Jolly Holiday number, where it used to just be the statues coming to life and it was very grey, and then for Broadway they made it very bright, and then for the national tour they made it even brighter with like flowers blooming everywhere. And various things kept tweaking and changing all the way through my run, and you don't normally get that when sometimes a director will direct a show and it might be a massive hit and then they don't tend to come back to it. But our directors and choreographers kept coming back and changing it all the time, which was really nice.
You did it with Laura Michelle Kelly.
I did. The lovely Laura Michelle Kelly was my very first Mary Poppins in London.
And then I heard you did it together for a short time.
I did.
Broadway.
Yeah, Laura Michelle Kelly originated the role of Mary Poppins in London in 2006, and she only did a year in the show. And I stayed with the show, then I came to Broadway, and it wasn't till I came back to Broadway after the US national tour that Laura was then playing it again 5 years later, and we got to recreate our Mary and Bert together. It was wonderful. And she's now, of course, performing just across the street from Les Mis in Finding Neverland.
Yeah.
Oh, you saw that too?
Yeah.
Step into
How was it the first time in rehearsal doing Jolly Holiday and stepping time? Were you nervous?
Was I nervous?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, in rehearsals, we took a very long time with Jolly Holiday and Stepping Time because they are about 6 or 7 minute numbers. They're very long and there's lots of components to it. The scariest part of the whole show was obviously in Stepping Time when, if anyone got to see the stage show, Bert gets to do this fabulous trick where he walks up the side of the proscenium arch and then he tap dances upside down across the ceiling of the stage and walks down the other side. And the first time they told me I was going to do that, I went, "Are you kidding me?" And then when I got to start rehearsing with it all on my own with like an aerialist and a professional that knows about those sort of things, I wore a very tight harness that was very tight around my waist and under my bits. And the very first time I did it, I only got about halfway up on the wires, and then I said, "That's high enough," because it was just too scary. But it's like anything, you get used to it, and it was very scary hanging upside down and trusting that these little wires that are attached to your hips and that are going up into the ceiling are going to hold your weight. But I was always told both wires will hold 10 times my weight, so I think I was okay.
What was your wife? What did your wife say about that?
Do you know what, I did tell my wife about it, and she was very worried for me. She kept saying, "You are checking that they're clipping you properly." But I actually never told my mum. So the very first time my mum came to see the show, we tried the show out in Bristol in England before it went to the West End in London. And I said, "I do a fabulous trick in Act 2 in Stepping Time," and I didn't tell her. And after the show, she said, "How did you get down from the when you were upside down?" And I went, "Well, I went to walked down the other side." She didn't see that because she was like this. So she never knew how I got down the very first time because she was just so like, "Oh my God," and holding on to my stepdad. She was like holding on to my dad, going, "Oh my God, what's he doing? What's he doing?" And so, but of course, my mum saw the show probably 20, 25 times in all, so she got used to it and knew that, touch wood, nothing was going to go wrong.
Wasn't your wife in the play with you?
She auditioned for the national tour of the US, and she got into the show, and she was in the ensemble, and she understudied 5 of the principal roles and went on a lot of times.
Yeah, I think you know my friend Tia Murphy.
I can Tia, yes I do, very well. You know them as well?
Yeah.
Do you want to know what? My wife is having lunch with Tia now. Tia is an actress that was in Poppins with us on national tour and on Broadway, and now she's in Aladdin, and today she's playing Jasmine, and so my wife's come to see
You
her.
should go by and say hi.
Yeah.
So how about the illusion?
What? I think your favorite illusion is when you hung up.
Yeah, that of course is my favourite. And also, most people's favourite bit in the show is either when I got to dance upside down or when Mary Poppins flew out into the audience at the very end of the show.
Yeah.
And I just feel very privileged that either any character in the show could have got to do that brilliant trick. I was just the lucky actor that got to do it, and I think that might be the highlight of my whole career, that I got to do that brilliant, scary Cirque du Soleil type trick.
What I want to know is, you're hanging upside down by your feet with your head pointing down to the stage. How did you not get all the blood rushing to your head?
You do, but you know what? People, their memory of it is that I'm hanging upside down for like 5 minutes. In reality, I walked up the side, so I'm only horizontal, and then when I went vertical, that's only about 35 seconds that I was hanging up, tap dancing upside down. And sometimes when you like had a headache or something, or a cold, and you're all bunged up, I couldn't wait to then flip and start walking down the other side, because you get quite a lot of pressure in your head. But it's not that long. It wasn't like I was hanging around there for hours.
You took a break for a while because your wife got pregnant, and you took a leave to go on maternity leave, and you were replaced by Kristen Borough.
That's right, yeah.
And how is it coming back after the role that you haven't done in a while?
Well, actually...
Did you need any rehearsals, or you remember the whole thing without any rehearsals?
Well, actually, when Christian was playing Bert, the reason he was playing Bert was because I was off on a national tour. And then I came back to Broadway, and it's amazing, when you watch the shows, they would look the same, but there were many little intricate changes. So I finished in Washington, D.C., and I had about 3 days rehearsal to come back to the Broadway show and remember the different choreography and the different actors, obviously all different actors. So yeah, you definitely have to go back into the rehearsal room and remember what I'd done like 2 years previous. So it was a bit tricky, but within like a few shows, you then forget what you did on national tour and you remember what you did on Broadway. So it doesn't take long for your mind to remember what you did before.
Now, I have a couple more. Now, how is it when you tour with a show that you gotta bring all the illusions with you, and what did they leave out?
When they did what?
Do they leave out any of the illusions when you do a national tour?
Oh, yeah, because with Mary Poppins, if you've seen the show on Broadway, the set was enormous, and it certainly wasn't something that could be toured easily, and so our designer Bob Crowley, he redesigned the set so it could be toured, and you know what? None of the illusions had to be cut from the national tour. They were still able to do. Mary Poppins still flew out right into the audience in every single city that she went to. I still got to do my walk around, and all the magic tricks were still in there. They find ways around it, so that they were very proud that the Mary Poppins tour was. You didn't miss anything from the Broadway production. So, and I was very pleased to be involved in that production.
Les Mis.
Now you're playing the innkeeper.
Nasty old stinking horrible Thénardier, yeah.
Yeah. How does your Thénardier differ than any other Thénardier? And what do you bring to the role?
Well, I've seen the show.
Do you know Matt Lewis?
Lucas, I don't know him personally, but I know that he was a fantastic Thénardier, and I never got to see him. I have seen him in the concert version that Alfie Bo's in. But I don't know, when a show's been running so long and so many hundreds of people around the world have played Thénardier now, you've got to try and zone out all those other productions or video clips on YouTube that you may have seen and try and make it your own. And I don't know, I just tried to, for Master of the House especially, kind of make him a bit like a weird vaudevillian type performer, because I felt